go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I'm Chelsea Litton, one of the school counselors here. The presentation today will be presented by Mr. Bill Novak. We're very excited this year that we're partnering with LEAF, the organization. They're based on the east side, but they're starting to come more on the west side, and we're really excited to get to have them because they are going to have a lot of information to share with you throughout now and throughout the year. I'll let Bill go over some more of the details of the information, but we did send a parent square out with a lot of their information, which I'm assuming you already received, and that's why you're here tonight. I'm also recording this, and we're going to post this out if anyone you know that wasn't able to make it tonight. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Bill Novak.
Thank you, Joe. All right.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. As Chelsea said, my name is Bill Novak. I work for an organization called LEAF, which actually stands for Lake Jaga Educational Assistance Foundation. They just shorten it to LEAF. We are a nonprofit organization. We've been in business for 30 years. Our focus is primarily financial aid counseling for students and parents, but we also get into some other areas, post-secondary options for the students, and we're getting more into the career area as well. And we kind of tailor that to what the school is looking for and what the school asks us to do. So my background professionally, I've got a career and workforce development background. I have a very good knowledge of both sides of the labor equation, from the supply and the demand side. But I really love what I'm doing, working with the students here and the parents, and I can't wait to get started. So thank you again for coming here. We're in addition to Westlake, we're also at Bay, and we're also at Homestead Falls on the west side. We're in 24 total schools. The bulk of them are Lake and Jaga County, but we do have a few in Summit and 3 in Cuyahoga as well. So we're going to talk about financial aid. You have 3 handouts tonight. I just want to briefly go over those. The one handout is the actual presentation of tonight's PowerPoint for you. The other one, the smaller one, 8.5 by 11, is a list of free virtual webinars that we hold on Mondays at 6:30. They're about an hour long. If you sign up for one and you can't make it, you can watch it at a later date. So if you miss it, don't worry, you can still see it. The smaller card is just a quick step kind of handout that we use for the students and the parents as far as steps to take in filing the FAFSA and going through the financial aid process. So let's get started. Okay, we're going to talk about, obviously, what is financial aid, looking at understanding the school costs, the financial aid application process, and what to do. Specifically, sometimes family situations have changed. We'll talk just briefly about unique circumstances and special circumstances, both. Different types of financial aid is offered to the students. Additional scholarships, which are very, very important to look at, and then next steps. Financial aid, obviously, there's different sources for the financial aid. The federal government is a primary source. State of Ohio has some really good grants too as well. Both the federal and the state grants are going to be need-based as far as the grants go. The Pell Grant and several grants from the state. The federal government also has loans for the students based on need and based on their situation. They can be subsidized or unsubsidized, and I'll cover that a little bit later. Certainly the colleges and the universities have their own scholarship, their institutional aid, their scholarships, the grants that they have, and private sources would be obviously some of the local scholarships here at Westlake, and I strongly encourage the students to always apply for the local scholarships. Again, gift aid, free money, federal and state grants, we'll get a little bit more into that when we talk about the FAFSA submission summary, and certainly scholarships. There's a number of national scholarships out there that are available to students. I want to talk briefly about these now. You can apply, for the students in the room or the students that are applying to schools, you can apply for the scholarships now. You don't have to wait until you apply to a specific school to apply for a national scholarship. The nice feature about the scholarships that we have and the ones that are on the Westlake website, you can use filters to look for specific types of scholarships, whether it's an ethnic background, a specific major that you're interested in, a group that you belong to. They all have filters that you can use to try to find a scholarship that's kind of tailor-made for you. So that's a good example of going out and trying to do that now. And you can do that now without applying to schools. Some of them you can actually do when you're a junior in high school. The self-help aid, obviously, loans, there's federal loans that are available to students. Those are based on need. That'll be part of the FAFSA submission summary that the student gets. And then there's something called work study, which is also based on need determined by the FAFSA. Work study is a paid program for the students. It can be on campus or off campus, depending on the college. They all do it a little bit differently, but it's money that goes directly to the student. Typically, you see amounts $2,000 to $3,000 on work study. The nice feature of work study is that, excuse me, while it's income to the student, obviously, because they're getting paid, it will not count on their FAFSA in the next year as far as income goes. It's exempt from reporting for FAFSA purposes only. So that's a nice feature. Schools offer aid based on certainly the merit. I think the students and the parents here know exactly what that is. The counselors do an outstanding job here of prepping the teachers as well as prepping the students with their essays and how to hone that based on what the scholarship organization is looking for. Financial aid is going to be, or need is going to be based certainly on a couple of factors through the FAFSA. They do look at the family size. They do look at income. They do look at assets, both from the parents and what they are, and the student side, both. They're going to look at all that. And excuse me. The family size. One thing about the family size that's changed, and no one can figure out why they did this. They no longer give parents any type of relief if you have multiple children in college at the same time. They used to factor that in. They don't do that anymore. And it just doesn't make any sense to anybody why they stopped. The notification from the financial aid office is typically going to be more after the first of the year. And that's going to occur after the student applies to the school, and then they'll get an offer letter or a financial aid award letter from the school. Can't stop that cost. Everyone here knows, I think, well aware how much college has increased over the last 15 to 20 years. It's really accelerated. It's getting more and more expensive. One of the things I always talk to the students about, and the students that are in the room, first of all, thank you for being here tonight. But I always ask the students, have a real heart-to-heart conversation with your parents, your family members, your counselors, the teachers, people that you could trust about the cost of college, and look at what that cost is. It doesn't have to be the most important factor, but it can't be any less than any of the other factors. It can't. It's just too expensive. When you look at the repayment schedules, and they'll all have repayment schedules attached to the loans, whether it's a federal loan or a private loan or a school loan. Look at that and see what that's going to be like when you get out of school in 4 or 5 years. Try to plan for that so that you know what you're getting into before you actually take the loan out. Understand price. One nice thing called the net price calculator as far as the cost of schools. Every school in America has a net price calculator. And if you just put in net price calculator, Baldwin Wallace net price calculator, Toledo, it'll come up on that website. And what the net price calculator does, it's going to replicate pretty closely what your FAFSA is going to reveal to you as far as what your aid is going to look like. It won't be exact, obviously, but it'll be close. It'll be pretty close. And it'll help you know what your options are between the different schools you're applying to. And sometimes, the private schools have generally moved in this direction. They typically have a little more money to give out, and they will try to get that price a little closer to what a state school would cost. So it's something to look at. But again, I think the key discussion for the family, to me, I have 4 children, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and they're older, they're out of school. But these are the kind of heart-to-heart talks that you have to have with as a family unit and see what works best for you. Price tags. So one of the things that's going on now, the tuition price is sometimes locked depending on the school you're looking at. It's locked for the whole time that the student is in school, or at least for 4 years. And that's a nice feature, but it's important to know that before you make a decision. Housing costs can change quite a bit too. Some schools might require you to live on campus for 1 year. Some might require you to live on campus for 3 or 2. It just depends. Meal plan costs are typically based on a radius from the school. If you live within a certain radius of 30, 40 miles, typically, you don't have to be on the meal plan because they figure you'd be a commuter. If you're beyond that radius, you have to go on the meal plan when you're at the school. Look at the costs are locked. The one thing that we're seeing now on a lot of the award letters, our fees are showing up and they don't really explain what the fees are on the award. So if you have to do a little digging, you call the financial aid office up and say, what are these fees about? And they'll give you an answer, but they don't list it on the award letter itself. They just put fees down. And then the average financial aid offer, that's typically available through the school. You can figure out what that is. And, the different award letters that you're going to get from the schools, then you can compare apples to apples when you have all those together. I already mentioned the net price calculator. Again, this is a really nice tool. Another good tool is called the Federal Student Aid Estimator. And that is available through the Federal Student Aid's website. And that will also give you a very good approximation of what you're going to look at. They're going to ask you to input your assets, your income, your filing status. They'll need some info from your tax return, how much tax you paid. And they're going to base this on 2024 taxes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the FAFSA. But you can get a pretty good idea of what kind of aid you're going to get based on these two calculators, the one calculator and the other estimator. The options, private versus public. In Ohio, the public institutions, all the state colleges, it doesn't matter where they are, they're going to range from $28,000 to $30,000 for room and board, tuition fees, books, transportation, additional costs. Look at that closely. Another option, obviously, is community college and branch campuses. If you can't get into the main campus of Ohio State and you really want to go there as a student, if you can get into one of the branches, as long as you have a 2.0 grade point average, they will take you at the main campus the following year. There's something called the college scorecard, which you can compare costs to. We have OSIS, but Naviance does a great job at this as well. So Naviance is used here at Westlake. And the financial aid administrators on campus, I would talk about different things. Some schools are offering discounts or reductions in the cost if you make a visit. They'll give you a discount if you visit the school. And I would encourage the students to keep up with contacting the financial aid office so they get to know who you are. And mainly, because if you want to leave that option open, it's always good to call when you get multiple offers from different schools and you really want to go to, say, one particular school, but other schools have given you more money for the offer. I think it's perfectly legitimate to call up that one school that you really want to go to and say, you know what, I would really like to go here, but I need a little bit of help. I know I'd be a good representative of this university, this college, and I need a little more money. Is there anything you can do for me because this other school is offering me this? We're hearing very, very infrequently, but it has happened. Sometimes they'll say, could you send me that award letter? We'll look into this, but could you send me that other award letter just to see what the other school is offering that student? But I think it's perfectly okay to ask for more money. And they like it better. The financial aid offices are telling us they really prefer when the student makes the call or the contact or the email, more so than the parents. Talked a little bit about this. How much can you afford out of pocket? What are the other sources of funding? The whole gambit of things. The loans and interest to students. And it's important, with the students, when I meet with the students especially, I say, again, I want to reiterate this because it's really critical. You don't really want to get out of college with a lot of debt. It's very, very difficult. We all know that. So I encourage the students, sit down with your mom and dad, project what this is going to be over the time that you're in college, and look at the repayment for the entire loan, not just the first year. And what is reasonable and unreasonable is a family decision. It's going to vary from family to family, but I think it's a decision that everybody has to have. And I want to talk a little bit more about why that's also important down the road here. Let's talk a little bit about the FAFSA. The FAFSA has changed. 3 years ago, there were about 110 questions on the FAFSA. Now it's just under 40 total. The FAFSA has really been streamlined. Everything is working well this year. It's working great. They actually opened it up a little bit before October 1st. So everything's going well. Last year was very rocky too. They opened it up later, but everything is fine this year for every report we've received. The FAFSA is going to reveal a couple of things to you after you get the submission summary, and I'll talk a little bit about that later too. But the FAFSA is important to file because you want to see if you're eligible for the Pell Grant, which is the federal grant. The most you can get from the Pell Grant this year is $7,395. There's also going to be the federal student loans, subsidized and unsubsidized. Subsidized is where the interest is paid for you while you're in college for the student. Unsubsidized is where the interest is going to accrue when you start college. So you're going to owe interest on the unsubsidized by the time you're in college. You will not owe interest on the subsidized loan while you're in college. You don't have to pay either one of those back till 6 months after graduation, but the interest accruing is going to be different. And the other thing that the FAFSA is used for is for state grants to be determined by each state. So it's important to do the FAFSA. Some institutions, again, pretty infrequent, they'll look at the institutional aid as well through the FAFSA. There's something else I want to mention, the CSS profile, and we'll get into detail on that, but there's some schools in Ohio that require also the CSS profile. There's about 275, 280 schools in the country that require this. It's much more extensive than the FAFSA. They go into much greater detail. They ask questions that the FAFSA would not ask. We'll go into those questions too. But typically, those are the schools that have more discretionary money to give out. So that's why they're digging a little bit deeper. The schools in Ohio, Case, Oberlin, Kenyon, Denison, Worcester, and I think Cleveland Institute of Music, if I missed any others. So those are the schools that in Ohio that require the CSS and the FAFSA. They're going to need both, but those are the schools that typically give more money out to the students. And sometimes the institutionals, the colleges will have their own little form that you have. That's an extra. That's pretty unusual as well. Okay, the first step in the financial aid process. Everyone needs, each student will need what's called an FSA ID. It takes about 3 minutes to do this online. It's very simple. They're going to ask you to set up a username and a password. You need your Social Security for that and some other information. And depending on the parental situation at home, the marital situation, one or both of your parents may need an ID as well. And we'll get into a little chart on that later. The FAFSA, as I said, is open. I probably wouldn't wait too much longer to do the FAFSA. I don't think there's any urgency to do the FAFSA unless you're applying early decision, because a lot of those cutoffs are coming up. So if you haven't done it and you want to go early decision, I would do the FAFSA now. If not, I would probably shoot for getting it done by the end of October. I would not want to wait until next year. Sometimes, and this is unusual too, sometimes the state money can dwindle down a little bit faster than they thought on the grants, on the state grants. Nothing drastic, but it can maybe be a little bit less at the end. So the sooner you get it in, the better, because that's going to be your place in line for that. The CSS profile, again, those deadlines are typically different for the CSS profile. So if you want to go to one of those schools that I mentioned, or any CSS school, usually they want it in by November 1st on the CSS. So please check the deadlines if you see a school that's requiring CSS. The ID, I already covered this, so this allows you to access the FAFSA form. It's very simple to get. It'll only take you a couple minutes to do that. And at least one of the parents will need a FSA ID. If for the parents who've already had students in college, you don't need another one. Once you have an ID, or if you've had one on your own, you don't need another one. It stays with you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, do both parents need an FSA ID, because this can be a little confusing at times. On the left, if the parents are married and living together, both are considered contributors. They're going to look at how the 2024 taxes were filed, and that's the data that they're going to import through the FAFSA with your permission. You have to give permission to do this. And they're going to move it over from the IRS into the FAFSA form. If the taxes were filed jointly, there's no need for both parents to be contributed, because there's only going to be one tax form, so either parent can be the contributor. If parents filed separately, then you both would need an FSA ID, because they're going to move both of your tax returns over. On the right, it gets a little bit more involved. Divorced, married, and not living together. They're going to ask the question, who provided the majority of the support over the past 12 months? They don't give a lot of guidance beyond that. They truly don't. So just look at that. Who gave the most guidance? This is as of the date you do the FAFSA. This is not based on a calendar year or fiscal year. It's just going back 12 months from the date that you do the FAFSA. If that parent is currently married, then their spouse is also going to be named as a contributor. So both the parent and the parent's spouse would need to be a contributor. If they're not married, then only the parent that contributes more than half would be the contributor. And if anybody has any specific questions, real quick, I will be glad to stick around tonight to answer any personal questions you may have. If it takes more than 2-3 minutes to do that, you've got a line of people. We'll set up a meeting time that we can talk a little bit more extensively. The FAFSA has been around for a while. It's free. It doesn't cost anything to do this. One of the common questions that I get at times from parents, we're not going to qualify for FAFSA. Why should we do this? Legitimate question. We make too much money. I think it's still worth doing it because you just never know how the grants are going to fall out, especially some of the state grants. And you kind of want to know where you are, and the schools want to know what the FAFSA has done too, if they need it for any type of reference point. What the FAFSA is going to reveal is going to result in are two important numbers that the student will get on what's called the FAFSA submission summary. The submission summary will get back to the student fairly quickly after the student and the parent or parents do their part of the FAFSA. And the FAFSA for the students, most students can do the FAFSA in about 10-12 minutes. Parents might take 12 to 15, maybe 20 at the most. When I talk to parents, I ask them how long it took to do this. It's really very simplified. It truly is. The student will get this directly through the government. The parent does not get it. It's called the FAFSA submission summary. And on that submission summary will be two important numbers. The student aid index, which for parents who had students in college in the past, it's called the expected family contribution. It's the same thing. They just changed the name. The number on that can range from -1,500 and up. Why they went to -1,500, again, no one really knows, because the most you can get as far as the effective number on the submission summary for the SAI is 0. They're not going to give you money back if it's -1,500. That number is going to represent to the college the contribution amount that's collected through FAFSA of what the student and the parent can typically contribute to the cost of the education. And that's what they're going to use to craft the award letter as well. Excuse me. So again, we talked about the FAFSA. You're going to use your 2024 income tax information on the FAFSA. They're going to move it over with your permission. And if the student filed a tax return, they'll ask the same question. They're going to ask some questions on the return. We'll get into this right now, or excuse me, on the FAFSA. You really don't need your W-2s or 1040s unless it's really involved. You've got some special tax credits involved or foreign income. But for the most part, you need your Social Security number. Students on the FAFSA can list up to 20 schools. If you want to add schools later, you can always add schools to the FAFSA as long as you don't go over 20. And you can change the FAFSA anytime if you need to make a correction, including adding a school to it. You can certainly do that. One of the nice things they did this year is they reduced the requirement on the value of a business. Now they only require you to report the value of the business or farm if you have over 100 full-time employees. The things that are excluded, any type of retirement-based savings is excluded. IRAs, 401ks, 457B, 403Bs, anything that's retirement-based is not included as an asset on the FAFSA. What is included is on the right, saving, checking, money market accounts, stuff that's liquid. If you have any stocks or bonds that are not retirement-based, they want to know about those too. They want any trust funds where the student is the beneficiary, they're going to want that as well, or the parent. 529 plans for the FAFSA are going to be, will have to be listed, but not by grandparents. So if the grandparents have a 529, those do not have to be counted. Parents, yes. Grandparents, no. And a net worth of real estate, if you own rented property, they are not going to ask about your home on the FAFSA. So that's excluded. Child support received will be counted as well. Assets included, we talked a little bit. Any Social Security income or disability are excluded as assets. And again, of course, retirement fund values will be excluded. Now, some of the things that I just talked about will be vastly different on the CSS profile. They are going to ask about your retirement fund and things like that. It's pretty detailed. So they're going to get into areas that the FAFSA does not. Again, typically because they have more money to award. Okay, after the FAFSA, we talked about the submission summary already. You'll get that. Students will get that in typically pretty quickly, 2 to 3 days after the FAFSA is completed by the student and the parents. Look at the submission summary, and you'll see the Pell Grant. If you have any Pell Grant coming through, that number will be on there. and also the SAI number is on it. I want to mention verification. This happens extremely rarely, but it can happen. It's done randomly. It's not because anyone did anything wrong, but sometimes they'll ask you supply additional information based on what you put on the FAFSA. They're not looking to trip anyone up or catch anyone. They just do this randomly. Not had anyone had to do it yet, but if it does, I want you to know that it can happen. We strongly encourage everybody to compare all the financial aid offers before making a decision, so you know you can compare apples to apples. And typically the offers are going to come in certainly after the new year. They typically come in more in January and February to the students. They might come a little early. This is excluding students that apply early decision. They'll get those quicker. General admission requirements you don't have to accept till May 1st. So I, again, strongly recommend don't make any deposits. Some schools may try to semi-pressure you to make a deposit as far as, we need your deposit, I would ask them specifically, what happens if I don't make a deposit? Do I have access, especially to access to scholarships? Can I still access scholarship information, to access the things I have to process that without a deposit? And just to make sure that they're not holding back on that. Most schools will be fine with that. They're not going to pressure you into giving them money. The offer letters themselves, what we're seeing on the offer letters that I want to mention real quickly are fees that are on there, and they don't really enumerate what this fee is going for. And it's starting to creep up the last several years. It's really been increasing a little bit. They're going to have the tuition, obviously, any housing costs, any meals, room and boards, that's all going to be on there. Indirect costs, most of the colleges by far will include books. We have seen a few award letters that don't include books. So if your award letter does not have books listed on it, please factor that in as a cost. Transportation, depending on where you live, might be a factor too. They'll have that on the award letter, and they'll put miscellaneous on there too, just for spending money for the year. They'll also list any aid that's offered in the form of scholarships that you have from the college or university, any grants from the state or the federal side, any loans that you have from the federal side, on the student side, and if you're eligible, again, based on need, work study going to the student. I want to talk just briefly about special circumstances. These are also very, very rare. These are, you can see but they do happen. They do happen. If your financial situation has changed from 2024, and you've had this scenario, certainly when we work with parents and families, it's not at all uncommon that things can change quickly for a number of different reasons. Healthcare, we've seen several related strictly to healthcare costs, job loss, that type of thing. It's critical to talk to each financial aid office separately of the college because they will handle that appeal and ask them what forms you need to fill out, ask them what process you need to follow if your situation has changed drastically from 2024 tax return to the present. And they're going to make the final determination of what they can do for the family and the student on the special circumstances. So if it comes up, we'll be glad to help you out with that, whatever we can. It's really handled directly by each school's financial aid office. Unique circumstances are even rarer, and you can see the examples on the far right. And this is where the student cannot really obtain consent on the FAFSA or it could pose a risk to the student. These situations can occur as well, but again, they're very, very rare. So if a student has this type of scenario, we can certainly walk through this with the student and a family member if it's not the parents. So just know we're out there to help you if this ever occurs. Talked a little bit about the CSS profile already. Cost $25 to send to the first school and $16 to send it to each additional school. It is, as I said, a little bit more, definitely more financial information than the FAFSA. You'll see that if you use the CSS profile. And again, please check the deadlines on CSS. Some schools will require them by November 1st. Just a general timeline. We talked about this in the presentation. For anybody here, I would just do the FSA IDs now and get them done. I would shoot for October. But for the FAFSA, it doesn't take long to do it. And unless you're on an early decision deadline or a CSS deadline, you've got to get it in quicker than that. And time is of the essence right now. mid-October. And a lot of those deadlines can be November 1st. So look at the school's deadlines. The schools will get back to you, as I said, pretty quickly with an award letter, but not until after the first of the year. They're not going to send it right now. They'll get back to you after the first of the year with an award letter. And those can trickle in even through February and sometimes March. And May 1st is kind of the magic day for accepting general admission to the colleges. And then in the summertime, bills are actually sent out, and then they talk about money being due. Okay, we already talked about the scholarships. I think, the counseling department does a great job here along with the teachers, prepping them for their essays and that kind of thing. The Pell can go up to $7,395. With another FS, Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, that can go up to $4,000. That's also going to be based on what the FAFSA reveals. The state has an opportunity grant that can be $4,000 to $5,000. They also have something called Choose Ohio First. So there's a number of state grants, and we can get into those when we need. But if you just Google Ohio Higher Education grants, it'll come up on the page, and there's a couple of grants there that might be applicable. Those are going to be considered in the FAFSA, and they might be available to you based on your need. Let's talk a little bit about student loans. Max for a freshman is $5,500. This is on the federal side. Again, this is going to be determined by FAFSA. The interest rate is set July 1st every year. The current interest rate is, I believe, 6.39. It's one of my booklets here. It's going to be set July 1st. Next year, we don't know what it's going to be. The current rate is 6.39. So that changes annually, and it'll track with the loan that's dispersed. The unsubsidized versus the subsidized interest, we talked a little bit about that, but again, subsidized means you don't have to pay the interest, or it's not going to accrue while you're in school. Unsubsidized means it will accrue while you're in school. And those determinations are made based on the FAFSA need, what the need is. There's also a Parent Plus loan that parents can be eligible to receive. That's also a federal loan. Those can be taken up to cover the cost, the remaining cost of the college. But that rate is much higher. I believe the current rate is around 8.5%. There's also origination fees for both of these loans. On the student federal loan, it's a little more than 1%, and on the Parent Plus loan, it's 4.1 something percent. Now they're going to take that money off the top before they disperse it to the schools. Private student loans might be an option. I've had a lot of parents ask me, I'd like to get a private loan for my son or daughter. Very often, if not almost all the time, the student does not have credit history built up. They're going to need a co-signer for a private loan, but they are available through your own bank, credit union, savings and loan. Many of the schools are going in this direction as well, where they have a group of not preferred lenders. I don't want to call it that. They've used them in the past, and they found that they're reputable to deal with. You do not have to go in that route, but they have a list of lenders, and if you want to go the private loan route, you can do that. Bank rate is a good place to look for private student loans as well, and that might be another resource for you. Those rates are obviously going to be very low to high, just again based on credit history. Talked a little bit about the Parent Plus loan. Private payment loan, we just covered that too as well. The Parent Plus loan, again, that is strictly in the parent's name. It's not in the student's name. And with either the Parent Plus loan or the federal loans for the students, those are triggered by a separate promissory note. You don't get those automatically. You have to sign a promissory note, typically in the summer, allowing them to disperse funds to the school, So that's a separate action. So you won't owe any money if you file the FAFSA. You have to sign that promissory note, which is completely separate, a separate decision. Talked a little bit about the scholarships. Again, I strongly encourage the students to look at those institutional scholarships that we have. They are listed. They're going to be listed on our website, and also on the handout. There's a couple here, the prominent ones. The Westlake counselor site does a great job too. They're going to have some of the same ones as well. The only reason we have LEAF on here is because we do have a couple of scholarships just for Cuyahoga County students. So I would encourage the students in Cuyahoga to take a look at that and see if they can apply for that as well. But the big ones, you're going to see a lot of the same scholarships on the big sites. They're not going to deviate that much. But don't hesitate to use the filters, especially if you're going into a field that's in high demand. Okay, get the student involved. Obviously, I strongly encourage the students, to stay involved with this. Talk it over with the people that know you the best. Your parents, your family members, your guidance counselors, your teachers here. We will do whatever we can to help you out. And I made this promise to the students when I talked to them briefly before, but I want to reiterate it for the parents that are here and also the students that are here. I want you to know that your sons and daughters, and for the students that are here, you matter to me. I mean that. And I will promise you two things. I will always believe in you, number one, and number two, I will always do my best to try to help you out on your path from Westlake on. So, thank you very much. If you have any questions, General, I'll be more than glad to answer them now for you. If they're private, I'll stick around and you can answer private questions. I'm here on different days. You can get a hold of me through my email. It's on the last page. Next steps, we talked a little bit about this. Here's my email, so if you need to get a hold of me, send me an email. I have different days and times that I'm here at Westlake High School. I'll try to meet you. If there's a conflict, we'll work something out, or if you can't make the times that I'm here, we'll work something out where we can meet on another time, or even remotely, if that works better for you. I much prefer to meet in person if possible, but if not, we can make it remotely too. So, any general questions that I can answer for you? Well, thank you very much. Thank you.